My little girl Emma was bouncing with excitement in her pink party dress. Her 7th birthday. She'd been counting down for weeks, waking up every morning to remind me how many days were left. I wanted it to be unforgettable for her, a day filled with laughter, friends, and the kind of magic only childhood can hold. But then she showed up. My mother-in-law swept into the room as though she owned it, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her eyes scanned the decorations with obvious disapproval, lips curling into that familiar sneer. "Really? This is what you call a birthday party?" she said, her voice dripping with contempt. I swallowed hard. I had been prepared for her sharp tongue, but not for what came next. The cake, beautifully decorated with rainbow frosting and Emma's favorite cartoon characters, sat proudly on the table. Everyone had gathered around to sing, the candles flickering in the dimmed lights. Emma's little face glowed with happiness as she leaned forward, ready to make her wish. And that's when my mother-in-law stepped forward, muttering something about cheap nonsense. Before anyone could react, she plunged her hand into the cake and dragged it across the table, smearing the frosting, crushing the delicate decorations, destroying everything in seconds. Gasps filled the room. A stunned silence followed. My heart stopped. Emma froze, her hands clutched at her chest, her wide eyes filling with tears. The cake, her cake, lay in ruins, frosting dripping off the edge of the table like spilled paint. "Better no cake than this embarrassment," my mother-in-law scoffed, brushing frosting from her hand with a tissue as if nothing had happened. The room was silent. Children stared, not knowing what to say. Parents shifted uncomfortably. I felt rage surge through me, hot and uncontrollable, but I couldn't even form words. My husband, caught between his mother and his daughter, stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like he was searching for an excuse. And then, Emma moved. Wiping her tears with the back of her hand, she sniffled, then pulled something out of her pocket. A small tablet, the one she loved carrying everywhere. She tapped the screen quickly, her little fingers working faster than I'd ever seen. Everyone turned to her, curious. And then a video began to play. The sound of her grandmother's voice filled the room, sharp and unmistakable. Asterisk, I'll ruin this ridiculous cake before I let her think she's any kind of mother. I'll show them all. She doesn't deserve credit for anything. Asterisk. It was recorded clearly, every poisonous word echoing through the room. Gasps turned into shocked murmurs. Eyes swung from the tablet to my mother-in-law, who had gone pale, her smug expression crumbling into something raw and unguarded. Emma's small voice broke the silence. "Grandma, why would you say that about Mommy?" The room went dead quiet again. My mother-in-law's face turned crimson, her mouth opening but no sound coming out. The words from the recording still hung in the air like smoke, impossible to deny, impossible to escape. I felt my knees weaken. My daughter had just done what I couldn't. She had exposed everything, right there in front of friends, family, and neighbors. The birthday party was no longer about cake or decorations. It was about truth. And there was no going back. My mother-in-law's composure cracked like glass under a hammer. She opened her mouth again, but this time no witty remark came out, no cutting insult to bury me beneath. Just silence. Silence, and the furious flush that crept from her neck to her cheeks. Every set of eyes in the room was on her, and she knew it. Emma, still holding the tablet, blinked through her tears, her small hands trembling. She looked at me, searching my face for strength. I forced myself to kneel beside her, to put a steady arm around her tiny shoulders, even though my own heart was racing so fast I thought it might burst. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. But inside, I was boiling. The cake could be remade, the decorations fixed, but my little girl's joy? That was sacred. And my mother-in-law had crushed it without hesitation, like it was nothing. Parents of Emma's friends began whispering among themselves. One of the mothers leaned closer to her son, glaring openly at my mother-in-law, then shook her head in disgust. Another father muttered, "Unbelievable," loud enough that everyone could hear. The shame spreading across her face was almost tangible, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. My husband finally broke free from his stunned silence. "Mom," he said, his voice shaking, What was that?" "You said those things?" She turned sharply to him, desperation flickering in her eyes. "You don't understand, No," he cut in louder now. "I've let you get away with far too much. I've let you belittle her," he gestured toward me, "and meddle in our lives. But this was Emma's day. She's 7, for God's sake." His voice cracked, and for the first time I saw him truly stand against her. The room seemed to close in around us. My mother-in-law's chest rose and fell quickly as she tried to regain control. "You're all making too much of this," she snapped, though her voice lacked the venom it usually carried. "It was just a cake, and that video, she doesn't know what she's saying. Children twist things." Emma's lip quivered, and she looked up at her grandmother with a fierceness that startled even me. "I didn't twist anything. You said it. You wanted to hurt Mommy. And you hurt me too." The raw honesty in her little voice struck deeper than any adult argument ever could. Guests shifted awkwardly, but not one person spoke in her defense. My mother-in-law, for once, had no allies. I pulled Emma closer, rubbing her arm gently. My husband placed a hand on our daughter's back, his eyes glistening with something between anger and regret. For years he had avoided confrontation with his mother, convincing himself it was easier to let her comments slide, easier to live with her constant disapproval. But tonight, in front of everyone, that illusion shattered. One of the kids tugged at his mom's sleeve and whispered, "Why would her grandma do that?" The mother only sighed and shook her head, glancing apologetically at me as though words failed her. Tension stretched unbearably until finally my husband turned back to his mother. His voice was steady now, colder than I'd ever heard it. "You need to leave." Her head jerked up. "What?" "You heard me. This was supposed to be Emma's birthday party. And you destroyed it. You embarrassed her, you humiliated my wife, and you made a fool of yourself. Get out." Collective gasp was almost as loud as the moment the cake hit the table. My mother-in-law stared at him in disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend that her own son had turned against her. For years she had pulled the strings, certain he would never cut them. But tonight those strings were severed. Her face hardened, and she snatched her purse from a chair. "Fine," she spat, her voice trembling with fury. "But don't expect me to come back. Don't expect me to forgive this betrayal." Betrayal? I wanted to laugh, but my throat was too tight with emotion. "You betrayed us the moment you decided your pride mattered more than your granddaughter's happiness." She glared at me one last time, then stormed out, slamming the door so hard the decorations on the wall trembled. For a long moment, the room was completely still. Then Emma sniffled again, clutching the tablet to her chest. One of her little friends came up and squeezed her hand. "It's okay, Emma. You can have some of my cake later." The sweetness of the gesture broke the tension, and a few adults chuckled softly, relief washing over the room. I glanced at the destroyed cake on the table, frosting dripping sadly onto the floor. My heart clenched at the thought of Emma's excitement, how she had dreamed of blowing out those candles. But before I could say anything, my husband put a hand on my shoulder. "We'll fix it," he whispered. His voice was firm, determined, and I knew he meant more than just the cake. Within minutes, parents rallied together. Someone ordered cupcakes from a nearby bakery, another offered to fetch ice cream. Balloons were straightened, the music turned back on. Slowly, laughter returned to the room, hesitant at first but growing stronger. Emma's tears dried as her friends pulled her into a game, their squeals filling the air again. I stood back, watching her smile reappear, fragile but shining. My chest ached with pride. My little girl had stood up against cruelty, even when the cruelty came from someone who should have loved her most. And though the night hadn't gone the way I planned, something powerful had happened here. A truth had been exposed. A line had been drawn. And for the first time, I felt like my family wasn't just surviving under my mother-in-law's shadow, we were stepping out of it. But as I watched Emma laugh with her friends, clutching her tablet like a shield, a nagging thought lingered in the back of my mind. My mother-in-law had left furious, humiliated, and dangerous. She wouldn't let this go quietly. And I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. The house was quiet, the leftover balloons sagging slightly in the living room, the faint smell of frosting still clinging to the air. Emma had finally drifted off to sleep, clutching her stuffed unicorn tightly, her little chest rising and falling with the kind of peace I envied. My husband lay beside her for a while before slipping back into our bedroom, his face etched with worry. Neither of us said much. The silence between us was heavy, filled with the echoes of what had happened. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail. The moment the cake was smashed. The look in Emma's eyes. The sound of her small voice calling her grandmother out in front of everyone. And then, my mother-in-law's face when she was confronted with her own words. She was humiliated. And humiliation was dangerous for someone like her. She thrived on control, on appearing superior, on making others small so she could feel large. That mask had cracked in front of everyone she knew, and I knew, deep down, that she wouldn't forgive it. Not me. Not Emma. Not even her own son. The next morning, I tried to shake it off. I busied myself cleaning up the mess of the party, sweeping up crumbs and tossing deflated balloons into the trash. Emma woke up cheerful, as if nothing had happened, telling me proudly about how brave she had been and how everyone clapped for her after Grandma left. I hugged her tightly, tears pricking my eyes at her resilience. She was stronger than I had ever imagined, and that gave me strength too. But when my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped. It was a message from my sister-in-law. Mom is furious. She's telling everyone that you set her up. That Emma edited the video. She's saying you've been poisoning your daughter against her. My hands trembled as I read the words. The audacity was staggering. My 7-year-old had simply pressed play on a recording, her grandmother's own words. And now she was spinning it, twisting reality to make herself the victim. I showed the message to my husband. His jaw clenched as he read it, his hand running through his hair in frustration. She won't stop, he muttered. She can't stand the idea of people thinking badly of her. Emma wandered in, still in her pajamas, holding her tablet. She looked between us, sensing the tension. Is Grandma mad at me? She asked softly. I knelt down so I could meet her eyes. Sweetheart, Grandma made a choice. She said hurtful things and then tried to hurt your birthday. That's not your fault. Do you understand? She nodded, but her lip trembled. Will she come back and ruin more things? I wanted to say no. I wanted to promise her safety, peace, normalcy. But I couldn't lie. Instead, I wrapped my arms around her and whispered, If she tries, we'll protect you. Always. That night, another storm hit. This time not at home, but online. A friend sent me a link to a local community group. There it was, a long, venomous post from my mother-in-law, painting herself as the victim. She claimed I had always hated her, that I brainwashed Emma, that the recording was doctored. She even implied that Emma was being used to get back at her. Comments were split. Some defended her, insisting she'd always been a proud woman who meant well. But others had been at the party. They described the smashed cake, the recording, the way Emma's little voice had cracked. Strangers chimed in, furious on our behalf. My husband scrolled through it, his face dark. This is exactly why I should have stopped her years ago, he muttered. She doesn't just cross boundaries, she burns them. Days passed, but the tension never eased. At work, people whispered about the drama. At school pickup, parents gave me sympathetic looks. Emma's friends kept asking her why her grandma hated her cake. And through it all, my mother-in-law's silence toward us was deafening. No calls, no texts, just the echo of her anger spreading like wildfire through gossip. One evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked, "Mommy, if Grandma hates you, does that mean she hates me too?" Her words sliced through me. I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing her hair back gently. "No, sweetheart. What Grandma feels has nothing to do with you. You're kind and brave and wonderful. If she can't see that, then it's her loss, not yours." Emma nodded, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. She missed the idea of a grandmother, even if the reality was cruel. My husband and I talked long into the night. "We can't keep living like this," I said finally. "She's crossed every line. And now Emma is asking if her own grandmother hates her. That's not okay." He looked exhausted, but he didn't argue. "I know. But cutting her out, it's going to be ugly. She'll fight it." "She already is," I whispered. "But at least this way, Emma won't be caught in the crossfire." He nodded slowly, and I knew he was finally ready. Ready to choose us. Ready to put Emma's well-being before his mother's wrath. The next day, he made the call. It wasn't easy. His voice shook, and hers rose like fire through the phone. She accused, she threatened, she wept, she begged. But he stood firm. "Until you can respect my wife and my daughter," he told her, "you won't be part of our lives." When he hung up, his hands were trembling, but his eyes were steady. I took his hand in mine, and for the first time in years, I felt a weight lift. Emma came running into the room with her tablet, grinning. "Mommy, Daddy, I made a new video." She pressed play. It was just her, smiling at the camera, her small voice sweet and hopeful. "Hi, it's me, Emma. Today is a happy day because I have Mommy and Daddy, and that's all I need." I swallowed the lump in my throat as I pulled her close. And in that moment, I realized, yes, the storm wasn't over, but the three of us were finally standing together in it. And that made us unshakable. The days that followed felt strangely calm, almost like the air after a hurricane, still heavy but quieter than before. Emma's laughter began to return in little bursts, her drawings filled with rainbows and unicorns again, not dark scribbles or frowns like the week after the party. I noticed how much she watched me and my husband, almost studying us, as if waiting for signs that the chaos would return. And every time she saw us smiling together, she seemed to exhale a little more. But my mother-in-law was not silent for long. It began with subtle messages trickling through extended family. Cousins called, not so much to ask how we were, but to probe. "Is it true you're keeping Emma away from her grandmother?" Aunts sent texts dripping with faux concern. "We know you're stressed, but maybe don't be so harsh on Mom. She didn't mean it." They tried to soften her actions, to blur the memory of frosting smeared across a table while a 7-year-old girl sobbed on her birthday. I knew what was happening. She was rallying her troops. My husband saw it too, though it tore at him. He loved his cousins, his aunts, but their blind loyalty to his mother was unshakable. Till for the first time, he didn't waver. "They weren't there," he said one evening as we sat in the kitchen, Emma drawing at the table. "They didn't hear her words on that recording. If they want to believe her, let them. I'm not letting her back in until she changes." Emma lifted her head at that, her voice small but certain. "Daddy, people don't change if they don't want to." I exchanged a glance with him, stunned at her wisdom. She had seen more of her grandmother's cruelty in one birthday than many adults saw in years. But my mother-in-law wasn't finished. A week later, Emma came home from school quieter than usual, clutching her backpack tightly. When I asked what was wrong, she pulled out a folded note. It wasn't from a child, it was in cursive, written by an adult. My heart sank as I read it. "Dear Emma, Grandma loves you very much. Mommy is just angry and she's keeping you away from me. One day, when you're older, you'll see the truth. Don't let anyone tell you I don't care about you. Love, Grandma." My hand shook as I crumpled the paper. My husband's face turned stone cold when he saw it. "She went to the school?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. "She gave this to our daughter at school?" Emma's lip trembled. She was waiting by the gate, Daddy. She said not to tell, but I didn't want to keep secrets. I pulled her close, fury and fear colliding inside me. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was intrusion, violation. She had crossed into Emma's safe space, trying to twist her mind, pit her against me. That night, we sat Emma down gently, explaining in simple words. Sweetheart, Grandma is upset. Sometimes when people are upset, they say things that aren't true to make themselves feel better. But you know the truth. You saw what she did. You heard what she said. And no matter what she tries to make you believe, Mommy and Daddy will always tell you the truth. Emma nodded, pressing her cheek against my arm. I believe you, she whispered. But I knew it wasn't enough. We needed boundaries stronger than words. My husband contacted the school, making it clear his mother was not to be near our child again. And though the staff were sympathetic, I could see the embarrassment on his face. No one wanted to admit their own mother was dangerous enough to be banned from school grounds. Weeks passed, and slowly life steadied. The gossip in the community faded, replaced by fresher scandals. Emma's birthday became just a memory, albeit a bruised one. Yet I carried it with me always. Every time I saw her smile, I remembered how close it had been to being broken forever. But one evening, as I tucked her in, she surprised me. Mommy, she said softly, I'm glad Grandma ruined the cake. I blinked, startled. Why, sweetheart? Because if she didn't, maybe nobody would ever know what she really thinks of you. And now Daddy knows too. And everyone saw. And I'm not scared of her anymore. Tears filled my eyes as I kissed her forehead. Out of the cruelty, she had found clarity. Out of the destruction, she had built strength. Later that night, I sat with my husband on the porch. Crickets hummed in the dark, and for the first time in months, I felt peace settling around us. She's stronger than both of us, I said quietly. He nodded, his hand covering mine. She's stronger because she has you. Because you've taught her not to be afraid of the truth. I leaned against him, exhaustion and relief mingling. The storm that began with a ruined cake had torn through every crack in our family. But in its wake, we had found something unbreakable. My daughter's courage. My husband's loyalty. My own voice. And though I knew my mother-in-law wasn't finished because people like her never stop, I also knew this. She had underestimated us. She thought smashing a cake would break us. She thought her whispers could poison a child. But she hadn't counted on a little girl with a tablet, a recording, and a courage far greater than her grandmother's cruelty. And I realized then, as the night pressed softly around us, that sometimes the ugliest moments are the ones that reveal the truest strength. Emma had shown us that. And no matter what came next, we would never forget it. The final confrontation came not with shouting, not with more broken cakes or public humiliation, but with something quieter, sharper, and far more permanent. It was Emma's school recital, a day she had been practicing for weeks. She wore a simple white dress, her hair tied back with a ribbon, her little face glowing with nervous excitement. The auditorium buzzed with parents finding seats, children whispering, and teachers scurrying about. For Emma, this was her moment. I noticed her scanning the room nervously as she clutched her paper program. And then I saw it, my mother-in-law standing at the back, arms crossed, eyes sharp and unyielding. She had defied the school's warnings, slipping in unnoticed. My pulse spiked, and I half rose from my seat, ready to drag her out if I had to. But Emma spotted her before I could move. Instead of crumbling, instead of folding into the frightened silence of before, Emma straightened her shoulders. When her turn came, she walked confidently to the microphone. She spoke her lines in a clear, unwavering voice, and when the applause echoed, her gaze flicked deliberately to her grandmother. It wasn't defiance, it was strength. It was her way of saying, "You can't touch me anymore." My mother-in-law's face faltered. For the first time, she seemed small, almost cornered. And when Emma finished, running into our arms with her usual bright smile, I saw the woman who had haunted us for so long quietly slip out of the room. She didn't stay for the end, didn't dare to face us again. In that instant, everything crystallized. She had tried to twist me into the villain, to paint my daughter as a liar, to control my husband with guilt and shame. She had tried to destroy with whispers and manipulation. But none of it had worked. Because what she didn't understand was this: truth has a way of shining through, no matter how much someone tries to bury it. That night, as we drove home, Emma sat in the back seat, humming the songs from her recital. She leaned forward suddenly, resting her chin on the headrest. "Mommy." "Yes, baby." She smiled. I wasn't scared this time. Not even when she came. I swallowed the lump in my throat, tears prickling my eyes. "I know, sweetheart. And I've never been prouder of you." She grinned, then went back to humming. My husband reached over and squeezed my hand, his thumb brushing against mine in quiet reassurance. We both knew what that moment meant. It wasn't just Emma's victory. It was the end of my mother-in-law's power over us. In the weeks that followed, her silence grew. No calls, no letters slipped into backpacks, no cousins demanding explanations. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she disappeared from the edges of our lives. Whether it was shame, pride, or simply the realization that she no longer held sway over us, she retreated. And for the first time in years, our home felt like it belonged to us, free from her shadow. But this story isn't just about her downfall. It's about the triumph of a little girl who refused to be silenced. It's about a mother learning that protecting her child sometimes means facing storms head-on, even when they come from family. And it's about a father finally breaking free from years of silent loyalty, choosing instead to stand for what was right. Emma's 7th birthday was supposed to be about balloons and candles, about laughter and games. Instead, it became something far greater, the day our family drew its line in the sand. The day we said no more to cruelty disguised as love. The day a little girl's voice, captured on a tablet, shattered the lies of an adult who thought she was untouchable. And though it hurt, though it scarred, it also freed us. 'Cause the truth once spoken cannot be unseen. And the strength once found cannot be taken away. So if you take anything from this story, let it be this: sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who claim they love you. But love isn't about control or shame or manipulation. Love is about lifting someone higher, protecting their joy, and celebrating their light. And when you refuse to let toxic voices define you, when you stand up, even if your voice shakes, you reclaim not just your dignity but your freedom. My daughter taught me that. She taught me that no matter how small you are, no matter how fragile the world makes you feel, your truth can be stronger than someone else's cruelty. She taught me that courage doesn't roar. Sometimes it simply speaks in a child's clear voice saying, "You hurt me, and I won't let you anymore." And that, truly, was the most magnificent gift of all.